The Gulf Coast is starting to see some impacts as the Atlantic is starting to ramp up. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have some things that we need to discuss with you today. We're going to start with our current area of interest that is going to be hugging the coast of Mexico and Texas over the next few days. And then after that, we're going to zoom out and talk about Atlantic-wide because there's definitely some things that are starting to pop up that have intrigued me quite a bit, especially with the models and especially going into the next couple of weeks that I want to go over with you guys, especially as the season starts to get act together and we start to get deeper into June and going into July. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off, we have our NHC area of interest right here, just off the coast of Mexico, just north of Veracruz, I believe it is, and it is expected to be hovering around that area, making landfall tonight or tomorrow morning into parts of northeastern Mexico before re-emerging off the Gulf Coast and impacting areas of Texas and even Louisiana as possible based on some of the ensembles. So we'll go ahead and read out this for you guys right here just to kind of give you a general gist of what the NHC is thinking. A broad area of low pressure just offshore of eastern Mexico continues to produce some shower and thunderstorm activity. While this system has been better organized since yesterday, marginal environmental conditions will probably prevent significant development before the low moves inland over eastern Mexico by Sunday. The system could re-emerge over the northwestern Gulf on Tuesday or Wednesday while interacting with a frontal boundary, but conditions there are also expected to be marginally conducive. They increased it for 20% chance of development yesterday. When I recorded it yesterday, it was at 10, but now it's at a 20% chance of development. So definitely the NHC is taking note of this, but still not necessarily the biggest chance. That doesn't mean that you don't have a big chance of some possible impacts. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this for a second. We're going to pull up some ensembles and then the operational, and just to kind of round out what might be happening over the next few days. So starting off with our ensemble runs right here, let's go ahead and move over to our North American sector, and then we'll go ahead and zoom in on our Gulf region right here. Let's go ahead and zoom in for you guys, and then we'll go ahead and go back to about 12 hours out. So this is the situation that we have currently. You have the system mainly hugging the coast over here for the time being before it makes landfall tonight or tomorrow. And then as time continues to go on, you're looking at this mainly staying relatively weak. 1007, 1005, 1003 have popped up a bit further to the east, albeit that is an outlier over there. And then as we go ahead to another 12 hours, the system really starts to move to the northwest and make landfall actually even closer to the Mexico-Texas border than what we were seeing previously. It really starts to move through there. It starts bringing a lot of rainfall, especially to the Rio Grande Valley and parts of Texas and Mexico. So if you're tuning in from Brownsville, McAllen, Corpus Christi, Laredo, you're going to want to take this kind of seriously because the flash flooding threat definitely could be a problem with this for sure. So that's what we're seeing, at least for right there. Then as we go ahead and go into tomorrow night, we start seeing this kind of drop off. You're starting to see this kind of become disorganized according to the ensembles. But then as time starts to emerge, let's go ahead and go to Monday morning. You're seeing some more of these ensembles starting to pop up over here, mainly inland, which I do find kind of curious. But this is expected to start heading further to the east and heading towards the Gulf Coast. And while it's not going to be showing that at least for another day or so, by the time we get to, okay, we don't want to zoom in on that little region over there. If it's possible to even do that, let's go ahead and go to 96 and update that. Okay, never mind. Let's go ahead and zoom back out and move back to the region right here. I do apologize for that, but here we go for you guys. And as we continue to show you that, we are seeing these ensembles starting to move further to the east, pretty much through southern Texas, impacting areas like Brownsville once again, Corpus Christi, and areas further inland as well, with some potential heavy rainfall with this as well. If you're tuning in from Port Arthur, Corpus Christi, Beaumont, and even the Houston area, you're going to want to pay attention to what happens next, because as the system starts to reemerge, more models are picking up on this and potentially having this moving out to the coast. And you're definitely going to start seeing a little bit of power associated with some of these ensembles right here. Looking at what we have for you right here, let's go ahead and update this. 986, 993, 1001, 998 millibars right here. That definitely on paper looks pretty bad, but and it looks kind of concerning. But based on what I'm seeing, this is part of the reason that we're not seeing like anything more than 50 or 60 mile per hour winds according to these ensembles, is because of the fact that this is a very large and very broad system. It's not very tight. It doesn't really have a strong core with it associated with it, based on what I'm seeing both on the ensembles and in the operational. And taking a quick gander, even going further, we'll go ahead and go 12 hours further. This is when things start to get a little dicey if you're tuning in from Galveston, Houston, Matagorda Bay, those areas, even into Beaumont as well, in parts of Louisiana. You're going to want to start watching out for this. 973, 977 millibars right here. Definitely more power associated with it. And basically what these ensembles are forecasting is, if this can move over water and it can stay out over water, you're definitely going to start seeing some power and some more pop associated with it. And I definitely noticed that for sure as I've moved on and as I've started looking at this. Mainly because yesterday we weren't seeing too much power. Now the ensembles that are over water are seeing more power with it, associated with it, because it's over water. It starts organizing a bit better. I am obviously a little skeptical of that, because my question is, okay, what's the wind shear going to be like over there for it to really support that? But we'll continue to keep going. Here is where we're at 6 days out as the system starts to emerge over into land. So that's what we got for you guys right here. If you're tuning anywhere from the Texas and the western Louisiana coast, you're going to want to pay attention to this pretty quickly, actually, as the system's going to be kind of hugging the coast and potentially bring some heavy rain for you guys. And we'll continue to keep you updated on that here on the channel. And very quickly, we'll pull up the operational run to kind of show you, okay, the ensembles are saying this. What's the European operational going for? Well, the operational, once again, pretty large, pretty broad system, making landfall tonight into tomorrow morning, kind of moving inland right here before starting to move into Texas and starting to interact with this frontal boundary over here as it starts to push further to the south, really bringing heavy rainfall to areas like Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi as well. And then as time continues to go on, we're going to 84 hours out. You definitely start seeing this system reemerging just a little bit off the coast right here, definitely noticing that consolidation starting to pick up a little bit, but by and large, the operational model isn't necessarily showing too much with this signal right here, and that doesn't necessarily surprise me, because a lot of the ensembles want this to stay further inland and not necessarily move out, or just very, like be very close to the coast rather. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me too much. Just out of my own curiosity, let's take a quick gander at our wind shear just to play some hypothetical hardball with this right here. So here's the wind shear at this current point in time. As we get to about 72 hours out, that shear remains pretty consistent and pretty strong across the western Gulf over here. Doesn't really do too much or really move around that much throughout its entire time. And I am kind of curious as to why some of those ensembles were showing a pretty strong power signal when the shear is really just kind of in an area where that would tear that apart. And I think maybe part of it is because, I think the European might be kind of looking at it, especially because this is going to be interacting with a frontal boundary. Like, I have a feeling that the European is kind of mixing the signals a little bit. And what I mean by mixing the signals is, instead of a tropical cyclone, it's looking at this as more so a mid-latitude cyclone, which would explain the lower pressure, and it would explain the lower wind speeds than what you would expect for a tropical cyclone as well. So overall, that doesn't necessarily surprise me too much, but ultimately that's something you're going to want to pay attention to if you're in northeastern Mexico, if you're in Texas, if you're in Louisiana. You're going to want to pay attention to this, mainly due to the flash flooding threat, and I'll continue to keep you updated as that progresses. But now let's go ahead and shift over to more so the kind of meat of the video that I wanted to get into a little bit more, and that is what is going on in the Atlantic. What are things looking like over there? And with that, let's go ahead and zoom out to our North Atlantic region right here. And I want to go ahead and actually start with the U-wind component because there are some interesting developments I do want to go over. So starting off right here, this is what we got for our U-wind. What essentially this measures is, are the trade winds stronger or weaker in the tropics? Red means they are stronger. The purple means they are weaker. So let's go ahead and start right here. Looking at the next 5 days, according to the European, Caribbean, below average. Outside the Caribbean, below average. In the Eastern MDR, below average. But watch as things start to go through the next few days. This is what we got 6 days out. Right here, definitely seeing this kind of persist across much of the tropics, especially in the northern part of the main development region, especially around the Cabo Verde Islands. You're still seeing that above average U-wind component in the subtropics right here, but in the deep tropics and in other areas in the southern Atlantic basin, definitely seeing lower trade winds and seeing lower wind speeds over there, right over there. This is going to be important for two reasons, and I will explain them in just a second, but my goodness, by the time we get into late June, this is where things start to get a little interesting right here. Things get a little dicey. The Caribbean really starts to it's the trade winds in the Caribbean really start to tank right here, and so do they as well in parts of the western main development region. And by the time we get to about June 24th, June 25th, even parts of the subtropics are starting to see that lower U-wind component as well. So that's something that has really started to pop up and kind of catch my attention for a couple of reasons. And the first reason for that is lower trade winds generally equates to lower wind shear across parts of the Atlantic. What that's telling me is in parts of the Caribbean and in parts of the Atlantic basin, the wind shear is going to be a little bit lower than average, and you're going to start seeing some more of those fluctuations that I kind of started talking about yesterday, where the shear just goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It becomes a lot more troughy and ridgy as well. So that's definitely something that's going to be interesting because that creates more openings for tropical development. At least in theory, it does. And the other reason I am concerned about this is because the lower trade winds cause less upwelling in the water temperatures. And what I mean by that is the lower your trade winds are and the lower those anomalies are, the faster the water temperatures are going to heat up. And in areas like the upper main development region that has kind of lagged behind, you're going to start seeing some heating from this pattern. The Caribbean, you're definitely going to start seeing a lot more heating from this. The southern Atlantic basin, you're going to see a lot more heating from this. And things definitely start to get a bit more dicey, especially as you look at the water temperatures already. And I'll go ahead and show you the climate reanalyzer because this is going to be kind of critical over the next couple of weeks. So pulling up the climate reanalyzer, this is what we got for you guys right here. The red line over here represents our water temperatures in 2026. The orange line represents 2025. The top two are 2023 and 2024 over here. Why am I bringing this up? Well, based on this trajectory, over the last couple of days or so, actually over the last day, we've started to see a pretty big surge in terms of water temperature across the North Atlantic, mainly because of these weaker trade winds that we're seeing right here. And at this trajectory, and especially with the pattern that's starting to emerge, this actually has a really good shot of eclipsing the water temperatures from last year across the basin. Now, you're probably going at this and going, Patrick, man, what does that mean exactly? Well, what that essentially means is the water temperatures and the below average anomalies that we were looking at earlier in the season, well, they're becoming a little bit more so, or becoming a little less below average, and they're starting to swing back more towards the above average as we've seen over the last few years. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and take a look at another chart I want to show you real quickly. This is our water temperature anomaly change based on the last 7 days. The biggest areas where we're starting to see a surge in that water temperature, especially in the anomalies, is in the main development region and the Eastern Caribbean. Those are the two big culprits that we're paying attention to right here that are definitely going to especially persist in the next a couple of weeks. And what that essentially means is that this hurricane season is starting to get more primed. We're starting to see maybe some better shots of tropical development. When will they come? We'll talk about that in just a second. But our water temperatures are really starting to ramp up and really starting to heat up. And even looking at our water temperatures right now, you're definitely seeing this kind of reflect. The Caribbean's definitely ramped up in water temperatures over the last couple of weeks. In the main development region, kind of remaining a bit stagnant, but you're definitely seeing those water temperatures really starting to boil a little bit further and further and further up to the north in the Cabo Verde Islands. Definitely starting to see some more water temperature heating as well. And even in the Atlantic Basin, you're seeing isolated areas of about 30 degrees Celsius just off the coast of the Bahamas as well. So that's definitely something we're paying attention to. And this warmer water temperature and these lower trade winds are going to factor into another thing that we're paying attention to, and that is ocean heat content. OHC continues to surge across much of the Gulf and parts of the Caribbean. Those are the two main culprits for right now. For those of you who do not know what ocean heat content is how warm are your waters and how deep down do they go. So essentially, it's like a fuel tank for hurricanes, pretty much. How much fuel is in the tank for this hurricane to get its act together and for it to start organizing, developing, and strengthening? This doesn't necessarily mean too much right now because it's mid-June, but it will start to mean a lot more once we get into mid-July, once we start getting into August, into September as well. Those ocean heat content values definitely will start to matter a lot more, but the reason I'm highlighting them now is because the trends that I'm watching for right here as well. Across the Caribbean, we're definitely cracking 125, close to 150 OHC in a few areas right here. That already is conducive for some pretty rapid strengthening if a system were to organize and develop today. Am I saying that that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I'm just playing with a hypothetical scenario right here. But ultimately, you do start seeing that surge, not just in the Caribbean in this part, but also the Eastern Caribbean and in the Western main development region. I'm noticing that surge as well. In the Western Gulf, definitely seeing a lot larger of an 50 to 75 OHC area. Same thing with the loop current. The loop current, interestingly, has been kind of lagging behind what it has been doing in previous years. We'll have to see how that ultimately pans out, but you are seeing this OHC get more widespread. The 50 OHC goes all the way near the Florida Big Bend region and off the Florida coast over here, and off the coast like areas like Miami and like Fort Lauderdale and those areas as well. So that's something you're going to want to watch out for. And as time continues to go on, this OHC business is only going to push further and further and further up to the north, and these potentially lighter blues will turn into greens, and the greens will turn into yellows further to the south. So that's kind of what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of months. Lastly, I do want to check a couple of aspects right here because we definitely looked at the water temperatures. We definitely looked at the trade winds as well. I want to see what our wind shear is going to start responding, and it's how things are going to start ramping up from there. So taking a quick gander at our wind shear, starting about 6 days out, you're definitely looking at this. You're kind of seeing the classic Caribbean graveyard look over here that you're kind of accustomed to for parts of late June and early July over here. But as time continues to go on, you're definitely noticing those troughs and ridges starting to pick up in parts of the main development region, and you're definitely noticing this shear really starting to lift up in tandem with the trade winds weakening, and that also applies over here in the Caribbean as well. You're going to want to pay attention to that, especially. The western half of the Atlantic Basin really starts to become a wild card and really starts to go up and down in terms of its wind shear. That opens the door for more tropical development, and that's definitely something we're paying attention to. But very quickly, going to 360 hours out, you would go from a more consistent large area of wind shear to those troughs and ridges really starting to pop out more across parts of the Atlantic Basin, covering the Caribbean, the main development region, and even in the subtropical Atlantic. So that's a lot of stuff that we're paying attention to, and we're going to continue to keep you updated on here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and close this video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, ask us questions, join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.